again with Ovid to discuss news, mostly election stuff. Um, gonna start with what Scott Pressler has been up to, and I have a bunch of Twitter links pulled up, hopefully in order. So this one, what was the date on this one? September 17th. Important Pennsylvania news. There's a rumor that Luzerne County Board of Elections has thousands of unprocessed voter registration and mail-in ballot applications. This is, for context, this is after he got enough Republicans registered to vote in Bucks County. He flipped his focus after he crossed that goal line for himself, and he started to focus on flipping Luzerne County. I believe he actually did succeed in flipping this, but even so, there's thousands of unprocessed voter registrations. And during a recent visit, reliable source heard a staffer say at the BOE, Board of Elections, "I hope we can get them done in time." This is the same county that ran out of paper on Election Day in 2022. October 21st is the last day to register to vote. October 29th is the last day to request a mail-in ballot, and there is heavy concern that the county will not get all of those requests processed. If Luzerne County Board of Elections is backlogged by thousands, this could disenfranchise voters. Even worse, ballots are already being mailed. A right-to-know request has been filed. We will get to the bottom of this. By the way, the office installed curtains up everywhere, and we can see a picture inside the office. Yep, those are some curtains.
Oh man, look at that curtains. It's kind of like the cardboard over the windows in Arizona and Wisconsin.
As far as I know, that's not even a vote count location. That's just the county office.
Oh yeah.
So in this one from September 18th, we have, this is Scott Pressler speaking at the Board of Elections. This is one of the public meetings. As far as I know, most boards of elections have these weekly, and usually it's traditionally only for county residents. And if you're an actual resident, you can put your address down to verify, and then you can get a 3-minute time slot to make a public statement or to ask a question of the commissioners. They have no obligation to respond, but they can if they want to. So that's how those, at least in my county, that's how those work. And I'm gonna play the, Scott Pressler is a Pennsylvania resident now because he did buy property in Pennsylvania specifically so he could vote for Trump in Pennsylvania. They tried to deny him permission to speak here because prior to this, he was not a Luzerne County resident, but last minute he actually leased land from someone in Luzerne County just so he could get permission to give this statement. So I'm going to turn it back to the beginning. Volume is on.
And please state your municipality.
Just real quick,
name.
you know what that reminds me of? It's kind of like when Matt Walsh rented property in Virginia just so that he could speak at a Loudoun County.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He showed up to a school board meeting during the whole scandal there with the the trans student raped another student in Loudoun County, and Matt Walsh rented an apartment just so he could speak at the school board meeting. So yeah, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Scott Pressler.
Are you able to hear that?
Jenkins
audio?
Township, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. I delivered a letter to the Luzerne County Board of Elections.
I did watch this video earlier though, but I mean I assume you wanted to
just gonna send that link to you
to play for the listeners. Okay.
Yeah. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
Play.
And please state your municipality and name.
Scott Pressler, Jenkins Township, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania. I delivered a letter to the Luzerne County Board of Elections on August 16th of 2024 concerning A, can you, the Luzerne County Board of Elections, with certainty tell us that not a single illegal alien, aka non-citizen, is registered to vote on the voter rolls, whether inactive or inactive in Luzerne County? May I get an on-the-record statement?
Well, we've addressed this at probably two of our last, out of our last 4 or 5 meetings. And Ms. Cook has addressed that. And on more than one occasion, we've had the same question. And so you certainly can look back through the recordings to hear that. Also, you can go to the Department of State. It's linked on our website that talks about this specific question that you have. I was just looking at it the other day.
Well, with respect, my time is continuing, so I just want to say on the record, the Luzerne County Board of Elections will not tell us definitively yes or no whether illegal aliens are registered to vote. I'm going to continue. I'm here because in 2022 on Election Day, your county ran out of paper on Election Day.
Our county.
Yes, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania ran out of paper ballots on Election Day. And I'm here also because there has been a reliable source that has said your county is backlogged by the thousands of voter registration applications and mail-in ballots. And I'm on here on behalf of 2 million people because this is disenfranchising voters that A, need to get registered to vote at their current address, and B, mail-in ballots are going out. If people are living in Florida and you are backlogged to the point that October 29th comes and mail-in ballots are sent by November 2nd, those mail-in ballots may not get here by November 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern time zone. I am here to stand up for the people and make sure that your county government is not disenfranchising voters, and we deserve answers. And I look forward to hearing from your director about that backlog. And we expect to see that number dwindle from the thousands that my reliable sources told me. And I thank you very much for the time and the opportunity to speak from Jenkins Township, Luzerne County, Pennsylvania.
Your county, our county. the salt there, the subtle backhand. And I'm curious why he chose to double down and say your county after that, but I'm going to keep moving on. This next link. Okay, this is why I got Lackawanna and Luzerne mixed up. This video that came out was from Lackawanna, which is a different county than Luzerne, but yes. I'm still going to play it. Breaking: Lackawanna County Commissioner Bill Gauguin caught calling conservatives ignorant and stupid. He said we need a civics lesson and denigrated former felons. Let me give you a lesson. In Pennsylvania, former felons can vote, and we've been registering them to vote for Trump. I'm going to copy this and send it to you, and then we can play that video. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, just a moment.
Of ignorance.
And ready.
Cool.
Just to wrap things up, I have to be honest with everybody. The level of ignorance, stupidity, and misinformation that was portrayed today as democracy is striking and shocking. As a former civics teacher, as I sat up here today and listened to some of you get up, it pained me. It actually bothers me. So it's clear that we need to start investing more in civics education in the United States of America. The fact that today we had to get an education on democracy and democratic values from two of the speakers who are convicted felons, again, is shocking.
You're disgusting.
Our election must have order. Our election office, as Director Hopkins said, is top-notch. In fact, when Al Schmidt was in from the state, he had said the same. So please educate yourselves on the process. Thank you very much. I'll make a motion to adjourn. On the question, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Have a great day. Thank you.
Shame on you. Now we know who gets paid. Beth is wonderful. You're a jerk.
The people in the audience are not liking that.
I wonder how many county commissioners they have in Lackawanna County. I know that we have 3. We have 3 county commissioners here in Lancaster. 2 are Republican, 1 is Democrat, and I think I've never been to one of their county commission meetings like those, but I think it's mostly a crowd of angry Democrats heckling The
It's
two
those for people
Republican
that don't have
commissioners.
jobs. They have time to show up in the middle
Oh,
of the
they're
day on a
yeah,
Thursday. Yeah.
and I'm part of the in an act of like monastic asceticism because I like the punishment. I'm part of the Lancaster subreddit. Um, just I enjoy the punishment. You could see them organize on there all the time. Crowds to go to the county commissioner meetings and raise hell.
Oh yeah.
Almost always about LGBT shit. Almost always, like that's their bread and butter. On pretty much every subreddit, I think. Um, but yeah, I know that two of the three county commissioners are Republicans. I'm not sure. I don't know Lackawanna County's. I don't know how their county commission is made up. I saw the one guy speaking, and he had two guys to the side of him there. Are all three of them county commissioners? I don't know. I could tell you that I was in Lackawanna County not too long ago. Maybe about, well, actually, no, well, it was a month back. It was at the start of August. My wife and I went out there, and you know, Scranton City is uh, probably pretty blue, but literally as soon as you get outside of the city, it's Trump Vance signs as far as the eye can see. Um, the suburbs and rural Lackawanna County are as red as it gets, more so than even here.
Nice.
So I don't know. Maybe in the next time they have a county commission meeting, maybe that guy gets maybe he gets beat out. That would be nice because
That's
that guy, there's nothing worse than being talked down to,
Yeah.
by your public, the people that you elect to represent you. Like
Yeah,
that guy
definitely.
was really truly the embodiment of smug liberalism.
Yeah. As far as the rules for commissioners go, my county has three. I don't know if it's a statewide thing that there needs to be three, but I know at least in my county there's a rule that they can't all three of them be the same party. There needs to be at least one Republican and at least one Democrat, but that third seat can flip parties. As far as I know, there's no third party that's big enough to get a county commissioner seat in any particular Pennsylvania county.
Okay. All right. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Um, I don't understand why they would want it to be that way. What if, what if a county is just deep red? Why bother having a Democrat county commissioner? But that's interesting.
I know at least on paper, uh, when they assign poll workers to all the polling locations, there needs to be a mix of parties in each polling location. If they can, they don't always have enough people of one party or another represented to get a person from each party in as a poll worker in each location. But that's at least the goal. That's on paper what they say needs to happen. It could have
Yeah.
something to do with
No,
that.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, you want representation of both parties present, not only at the voting booths, but the counting the counting and the tabulation
Yeah, that as
areas as
well.
well. Yeah, yeah, you need to have representatives of both parties for sure.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, I saw Scott Presler's response to that. Actually, I've been following him now for a couple weeks, what he's up to and what he's doing.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Yeah, yeah, he really is. He's doing God's work out there. You know,
I have his response pulled up here. Uh, you can see it's a screenshot of an email that he sent to Gauguin, Lackawanna Elections. Commissioner Bill Gauguin, according to you, I am an ignorant and stupid voter in need of a civics lesson. Well, last night at the Bloomsburg Fair, I helped educate a mom that former felons can vote in Pennsylvania. I registered her to vote at her current address. A former felon just canceled your vote. Thank you for inspiring me to share this civics lesson to my platform of 1.6 million on X. Your video from the Lackawanna Board of Elections meeting is doing quite well on social media. Also, I purchased a home in Pennsylvania just to vote for President Trump. Scott Pressler.
It's based.
Based. Pennsylvania, let's go.
Absolutely based. Yeah. Yeah, I posted something at him on X about a week ago, and he actually responded to it. I was surprised.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I just said consider coming to Lancaster County. I said I think it's still a red county, but demographics here are shifting, and it is changing. And what he did was he linked me to, I guess he has like a bunch of subordinates out in the field,
Yes.
in different counties.
Yep.
So he kind of linked me to his Lancaster County guy, who I still need to reach out to and get in contact with. I want to maybe get involved in the ground game and help out here. So
That's great, because it's like a whole parallel door knocking team to what the RNC is doing. We're essentially doubling the Republican candidate's ability to door knock in Pennsylvania, because we have two parallel teams for it. The Democrats still have one.
yeah, but I mean the RNC historically typically has always been really bad at this.
Right, that too, yeah.
And the DNC has always historically been really, really good at get out the vote efforts.
Yep.
At the door knocking aspect of the game, and yeah, it's good to see that there's Scott Presler and his whole army of people. It's hard to say to what degree they're supplementing the RNC shortcomings. One would hope. One would hope that he's making the playing field competitive here in the state. It's just, it's hard to say. It's hard to say because there's so much at work against us. There's so much, there's just so much bullshit right now. Just look back at the video of him speaking at the Luzerne County commissioner meeting. There's really no excuse for why a county would run out of paper ballots, or why their backlog of voter registrations would be in the thousands.
For each polling location, they have the number of people who are registered to vote there. They should be prepared.
No, and it kind of sounds purposeful. It's hard to just chalk that up to incompetence. My question, I guess, would be in every election prior to this, have they been woefully unprepared, or is this something that's kind of a new, recent lack of preparedness as a result of an increase in Republican registrations? My instinct is kind of telling me it's the latter there. It's the second, that as the tides shift and more Republicans are registering, they seem to find their apparatus becoming increasingly incompetent in order to answer that demand. At least that's how it seems.
Incompetent, and 2020 just made a lot more people want to look into it, and so they're starting to find this stuff.
Oh, I don't even have a link for this. I saw this the other day though. Someone posted that polling locations are going to be understaffed all across the country, and to expect tremendous delays because poll workers and vote counters feel too threatened to volunteer for the job.
Oh, they feel
so
threatened.
Yeah, they feel too threatened. So
I
as a result,
the exact issue in my county, I think every county is probably different, but in my county, in the 2022 primary, they tried rolling out this new machine. They replaced on the book that you have to sign to compare your signature, they replaced that with a fancy overpriced tablet from some vote machine company. And when they got all those tablets out to the polling locations, okay, we're ready for the election, it's like 6 or 7 a.m., everyone's setting these things up, and we start finding out the tablets don't have the database of voter signatures loaded onto them. So all morning, the rovers, each county has election rovers that are supposed to just drive around, hand out paychecks to the poll workers, and check on each polling location to see how they're doing. the rovers were like pulling their hair out trying to get to all these locations and replace the tablets with the physical paper book. For that election, a judge actually did order the extension of voting hours, so it's already like a 14-hour day, and all the poll workers had to stay there like an extra hour or two. And that election, I think, is where Berks County lost a lot of our poll workers, because the county completely dropped the ball on that, and even after that election, we're still trying to force these new tablets in. And that's not the only new machine they got. And a lot of these poll workers, let's face it, they're retired widows, and their ability to learn an electronic device as opposed to comparing a signature in a paper book is not the same. It's a mess. And that's why my county in particular has been low on poll workers. Every county probably has a slightly different story. So when someone says there's a national source for it, I have doubts.
Yeah, I want to say that I saw that, pretty much. It might have been the same article that was discussing how Pennsylvanians need to expect that they're not going to have the results on the first night. Be prepared. Be prepared for a multiple day wait.
Same story as 2020.
Just because someone's winning night one doesn't mean they've won. So all the shenanigans are going to be in full play, the full bag of tricks. Maybe a couple new tricks. I don't know that illegals played a huge role in 2020. I think illegals are going to play a much larger role here in 2024, just because their numbers have been so bolstered. Just increased so much in a 4-year span. But that's we'll revisit that in a little while. That's something I'm going to speak more on once we talk about maps.
I think Shapiro's executive order that was basically mandatory voter or automatic, not mandatory voter registration at DMVs. What I've seen on the ground, hearing directly from county commissioners, is they don't have the tool to verify whether every one of those is a legal citizen. I don't know why they wouldn't. I've seen tools that do something similar. I would think they'd be able to use those, but I'm hearing from commissioners that they don't have that ability. And just like my gut feeling, inferring based on things I've heard from the state government, my guess is that enough commissioners are complaining about that something might actually get changed. But in the meantime, they're trying to save face when all these people from their locality come to those public meetings and ask, are illegals registered to vote here? No comment. Meanwhile, they're like sweating and sending emails to the Pennsylvania State Department. That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned Lancaster County. This is the post that Scott Pressler has pinned to his Twitter. President Trump, CC President Trump, he tags him. I don't know if you'll see this, but I spoke to an Amish man last night that really wants you to come to Lancaster County. He said more Amish people would be able to attend your rally if it's on a Saturday. He also suggested to advertise in the local newspaper so the Amish will be able to read it. Democrat Governor Shapiro and the Department of Agriculture are waging a war on raw milk farmers and the Amish. By doing a rally in Lancaster connecting with the Amish, you could very well win Pennsylvania. And the photo is an Amish lady carrying a Trump sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's a little bit in line with kind of what I what I posted at him about Lancaster County. I just said something to the effect of, come to Lancaster County. The demographics here have been shifting blue due to an influx of people from New York, New Jersey, New England, but the Amish can and will be mobilized. And then, like I said, he just directed me to his Lancaster County guy, which, funny enough, that guy responded to me. He said, I haven't seen much of a shift in Lancaster, and I just told him, I base that off the school board elections. The last round of school board elections. Well, I'll just back up a little bit. You may recall, in 2020, 2021, a lot of the school boards nationwide shifted red because, well, the big reason that was attributed to that was at-home learning. So all the kids were um, learning from home, and they were watching their teachers teach from, iPads and computer screens. And parents actually, for the first time, had a chance to kind of look over the shoulder and see what was being said. And I think a lot of parents were pretty disgusted at what they were seeing. And you saw this massive sweep nationwide of school boards, which have traditionally been kind of a bastion of leftists, because leftists get involved and they have an appetite for offices and offices and positions in almost any administrative body that conservatives I don't think typically have. Conservatives are content to not get involved in all of the administration,
Right.
and kind of sit on the side. And you saw that shift. You saw that shift in 2021 in school boards, and then you had the Loudoun County, um, scandal, which I kind of referenced earlier. Um, and that's true here in Pennsylvania too. You saw school board shifts. They shifted red. Well, in the most recent round, which I want to say was like 2023, they kind of shifted back blue a little bit here in Lancaster County, and that's not every township, but some of the townships. Um, you know, you had school boards that went almost entirely red. Well, now they're like even 50-50 again, and that's because Democrats, I think they see a vulnerability in Lancaster County just because so many people are moving into this county. I think they see it as an opportunity area, and I think that they're kind of just playing the long game and chipping away at it. In the last round of county commissioner elections, the Republicans still won, but it was narrower, and it's been getting narrower every time. So I mean, you can see a trend, you can see where it's going. So that's why I posted it at Scott. I said, "Come to Lancaster County." I said, there is demographic shift taking place here, but if the Amish are mobilized, then it'll negate anything and everything that they're trying to do, because the Amish are just, they're so populous and there's so many of them. And I think they are going to be mobilized this time. And exactly for the reason you said, because you've got Department of Agriculture, you've got the FDA, you actually had the FBI. The FBI raided that farmer's farm, in a guns drawn raid. That kind of stuff. That kind of stuff mobilizes an interest group to vote against
Yeah.
you. So I think that the Amish are going to be mobilized. We'll see. I hope it's enough.
I hope so too. And yeah, especially advertising in a local newspaper, they see that. They don't see online stuff. They don't see what we're talking about, but they see local newspapers. I'll second that.
Right, right.
And then the final Twitter post in this saga of the Scott Pressler story. We are being lied to. This is probably one of the most important posts I'll make on social media. Reliable source tells me Luzerne County Board of Elections has 15,000 unprocessed voter registration and mail-in ballot applications. Reminder, Pennsylvania was decided by 80,000 votes in 2020. So this one county out of 67 has 15,000 that they haven't processed yet. Board of Elections is also refusing outside help to get these forms processed. This is happening in a county that ran out of paper on Election Day in 2022. When we first discovered the backlog, we were told there was no backlog and it was a rumor. Please note that the press release below does not include mail-in ballot requests, nor does it include online versus paper ballot applications. So his source for this is a press release from the actual county office. Gonna keep reading. Last day to register to vote is October 21st. This is voter disenfranchisement. Luzerne County may very well determine who wins the presidency. I saw he did threaten lawsuit in an earlier post to Luzerne County on this topic. It would be so entertaining if that happens.
It would.
I
It
hope
would.
Luzerne County accepts outside help. I hope they get this backlog under control, but it would be entertaining if it ends up being a lawsuit.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I hope that I hope that the threat of illegal the threat of legal action lights a fire under them, but I mean I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think it's unlikely that Luzerne County actually will decide the election, but I guess it's important to keep in mind that there's 1,000, there's 1,000 counties just like Luzerne County nationwide that are all kind of going through the same tug of war.
Yeah. So, shall we get into electoral news?
Sure, yeah.
This is an archive of an Al Jazeera article. Mayor of the only Muslim-run city in the U.S. endorses Trump for election. Amer Ghalib, who leads the city in the battleground state of Michigan, says the Republican is the right choice despite disagreements. Amer Ghalib, who leads the city of Hamtramck. I don't know if that's a misspelling. Hamtramck. In the crucial battleground state of Michigan, said on Sunday that Republican candidate is a man of principles and the right choice, despite their disagreements on some issues. I would assume that Gaza is one of their disagreements, but I saw a video of a homeless black dude being interviewed on the streets of Boston, and he said, "Trump is honest. Trump might hate me, but even if he does hate me, he's going to tell me to my face he's honest. I don't know how Kamala feels about me." And that's the feeling I get here. They might have disagreements, but Trump is a man of principles, is the words that this mayor used.
Right, right, absolutely. I think that's how a lot of people feel about Kamala right now, that they don't really know what she thinks or what she feels. Um, her policy positions, her beliefs are just very chimeric right now. They're chameleonic. They're constantly changing.
Yeah.
I this mayor, I would be curious to know what his political party affiliation is. Is he a Democrat? Because that would be really telling if he is.
That's an interesting question. I don't know him specifically, but I will get into something very similar to that.
Most mayors are, because mayoral elections are always held in kind of
that does make sense.
urban locations, which are almost always, overrun with leftists. So as a result of that, the majority of mayors are Democrats.
This one could be an outlier because it's a Muslim enclave.
Sure, sure. But I mean, like Dearborn. Dearborn is
Right.
the big area that gets mentioned all the time. The huge Muslim population in Michigan. I know that the mayor of Dearborn is a Democrat. I suspect that Dearborn is going to go heavily for Kamala Harris.
We'll
But I
get
don't know.
into
You tell
that.
me what you think on that. I think they do. I think they do, because I think she winks and nods at them that she's on their side. And
We'll get into
what
that.
I think they're a single, for starters. I think they're a single voter issue. I think, because I it seems to me that they're willing to put aside. Islam has no tolerance for homosexuality. Islam has no tolerance for transsexuality. It has no tolerance for abortion, and yet, for some reason, Muslim Americans seem perfectly fine to set all that aside when it comes to one single issue, and that's Israel v. Palestine.
You're on to
But
something there. I'm heading that direction.
all
Quote
right,
from this.
well,
Yeah.
I'll let you tell me what you've got then.
Yep. Quote from this guy's Facebook. President Trump and I may not agree on everything, but I know he's a man of principles. Though it's looking good, He may or may not win the election and be the 47th president of the U.S., but I believe he's the right choice for this critical time. I'll not regret my decision no matter what the outcome would be, and I'm ready to face the consequences. Now, let the caravan begin its journey, Ghalib added. This is just the starting point. Trump reposted Ghalib's endorsement on his Truth Social platform shortly after the announcement. You can see they took a photo together. Hamtramck, they spelled it that way again. Is that actually the city's name? Who thought of that name? Which has a population of 28,000 people, made headlines in 2021 when it became the first U.S. city to elect all Muslim city council and a Muslim mayor. Ghalib, who immigrated from Yemen when he was 17, offers his support to Trump. Let's see here. Told the Detroit News last week that the pair discussed concerns of Arab and Muslim Americans that Trump requested his endorsement. So that's interesting. They actually did sit down and have a conversation. I wonder what happened there. I gotta wonder. I wonder if Trump laid out a solid plan to get a ceasefire at the very least enacted, and that I think would be good for both sides, not just Israel. I don't know. I'm going to keep going. Opinion polls suggest a tight race between Trump and Harris. In the most recent average of polls, blah, blah, blah. Now, here is the very spicy part. In a poll released by the Council on American Islamic Relations in August, just 12% of Muslim voters in Michigan expressed support for Harris, with 18% backing Trump and 40% supporting the Green Party's Jill Stein. For those who are good at math, that is 30% undecided. Those are the numbers I want to hone in on. I actually did look this up to see how they trended in 2020. You'll see, according to this study at least, most Muslims in 2020, between 80 and 90%, went for Joe Biden, and probably between 5 and 10% went for the Green Party, Joe Jorgensen, and probably between 5 and 10% went for Trump in 2020. Now, I pulled up the Muslim populations of a bunch of states. We're going to go through this. This is some spicy stuff. Pennsylvania was decided by 80,000 votes in 2020. And let's see, the Pennsylvania Muslim population is about 150,000. So if we take 40% voting third party and 30% undecided, and where last election they were between 80 and 90% voting Democrat, 150,000, what's 50% of that is about 75,000. That's, if you combine that with the extra 10% boost that Trump got, according to this, the difference between 18% support, according to the poll that the Al Jazeera references, and the actual vote results from this 2020 study, Trump goes up by about 10% in support with Muslims. 75,000 voting third party, and that extra 10% voting for Trump, that alone, not even counting RFK Jr., not even counting the economy, not even counting people who soured on Biden's inflation policy, Biden's immigration policy, just that Muslim community, that single issue vote group, puts Pennsylvania over the edge for Trump. What do you think so far?
I mean, I'm less confident. I'm less confident that the undecided Muslim voters turn out for Trump than you are. But I mean, I do think that's interesting. That's interesting numbers.
They don't need to turn out for Trump. All they need to do is not vote. Or vote third party.
Well, I think, like I said, I think that they will. I think that they will vote. I don't know. I think that they will vote for Kamala. Um, just because, like I said, I think that they're motivated so much by one single issue, and I think that she's paying more lip service to their stance on that, um,
Well, that's the thing.
than
I've been
Trump
following the
is.
Green Party. They've been getting like legit real endorsements from Muslim community leaders posting that on their YouTube. And Jill Stein, of the three candidates, if we're counting Jill Stein as well, she's the only one who is vocal in support of Palestine. Kamala is trying to sit on the fence and not making,
She's trying to have it both ways.
yeah, trying to have it both ways and not,
While
yeah.
kind of, I mean, if you press me on it, I would say she's winking and nodding to the pro-Palestine side a little bit more. Um, she's got this tendency to say Israel has a right to defend itself, but she always has a but they've killed too many innocent people, and there has to be a ceasefire, and there has to be a two-state solution. And so she says like it's almost like you have to have the preamble. The preamble is like a required sentence starter. Israel has a right to defend itself, and then she says all the things they want to hear, and they just turn on at the second half of that sentence. And the first part of it, I think they know that she doesn't really feel that way, or she doesn't really mean it,
Right.
you know. But
Well, according to
you know,
this poll,
that's interesting though.
40% of Muslims in America are planning to vote for the Green Party.
Yeah, I mean, and if they do, I think, yeah, you're right. That could have a serious impact.
On to the
I mean,
next state.
that's really interesting.
Yeah. Michigan. The gap in 2020 was about 150,000, 155,000. That Muslim population in Michigan is 241,000. So if 10% of those vote for Trump that didn't before, and if, let's say, 50% of those completely vote third party or don't vote for Republican or Democrat, sit out, that brings Michigan pretty close. And next state, New York. You'll see here, New York has over 700,000 Muslims. And the 2020, the gap between those two was about 2 million. So the Muslims alone won't be enough to flip New York. However, this is the 2022 gubernatorial election in New York. This gap is a lot closer. This gap is more like under 400,000 votes. And let's see. Dominican population in the Bronx, just that one part of the city, is over 300,000. I think Hispanic voters are trending a lot more right than they used to. Just speaking as someone who's been to the Bronx, I like to think I have my finger on the pulse of that community at least a little bit. I think we're going to be surprised with Dominican voters specifically voting on immigration issues. And again, black voters in the Bronx. 800,000 blacks in Brooklyn, almost 500,000 in the Bronx, over 400,000 in Queens. I think blacks are going to flip out, and I think especially in New York City, on the immigration and crime issues, I think blacks are going to vote more for Trump a lot more than in 2020.
I could see him potentially breaking into like 15% of that vote, which would be apocalyptic for Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Apocalyptic. Anything over like 10% would be apocalyptic for them. I could see him. I could see him maybe hitting like 15%. I don't think 20% is realistic. I think, maybe like 15%. And I think with Hispanics, I could see him, clearing like maybe 45, almost 50%, which would also be apocalyptic for Democrats.
Yeah, I pulled this up. 2020. In 2020, Donald Trump got 15.9% of the vote in the Bronx, and Biden got 83%. Total in the city, New York City as a whole, Biden got 76%, Trump got 22%. I think in the Bronx, I don't know Manhattan or Long Island or Brooklyn, but I do know the Bronx. I think Trump could easily get more than 20% of the vote in the Bronx.
Yeah, maybe that'd be something else.
I think we're going to be surprised. I think a lot of people, like, I understand seeing a gap of 2 million and thinking it's insurmountable, but if we take in the black community, the Hispanic community, the Muslim community, I think we're going to see some surprises. Here's
Can you?
another surprise.
Do you think
Over,
really quick?
yeah,
You could just go back to what you just had up 2 tabs ago with the yeah, back one that one right there. Can you just link me that real fast, please?
yes.
I want to look at something.
Yeah,
Cool,
it's.
thanks,
I
man.
found it by scrolling down in the New York State election results for 2020. And here's the next thing. Uh, I think I shared a video to the Discord server that we're both in a couple weeks ago. It was some guy on the streets of Brooklyn interviewing Orthodox Jews, asking them who they plan to vote for. More than 90% of the people in that video said Trump. There's 500,000 Jews in Brooklyn. Now that I think of it, I don't know how they voted in 2020, but I'm comfortable estimating that more than 80% of those are going to vote for Trump. These are Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn.
It mostly depends. It mostly depends on to what extent Judaism is part of their religious conviction versus whether or not they just have a Jewish name. Um, you know, for every Orthodox Jew, um, who they do lean socially tremendously conservative. Um, for every Orthodox Jew, you've probably got like 10 like Doug Emhoffs, who conveniently put on their Jewish outfit every time it suits them, and then otherwise, besides that, they're just secular. They're secular people who happen to have a Jewish last name.
I just googled this. This is the New York Times says this. Of the 600,000 Jews living in Brooklyn, more than half of those are Orthodox. And this is just Brooklyn. This doesn't include Manhattan, Long Island, Bronx. I know there are Jews in those other areas too. Man, oh man. I I think the Democrats have reason to sweat about New York State in this election. But wait, there's more. New York City multi-candidate polls. Uh, here's there's a poll from August? Yeah, August of this year that shows New York State, Harris at 49%, Trump at 37%, RFK at 7%. 7. So I saw, at least most people agreed before RFK dropped out, that if he drops out, 60% of his voters are going to Trump and 40% are going to Harris or Biden. But we didn't expect him to completely endorse Trump, go on stage at Trump rallies, make several interviews talking about why we should vote Trump. If it was 60-40 before, I don't know what it is now, but imagine how that 7% is going to vote and combine it with all the other groups I talked about before.
Yeah, yeah,
I think New York is a lot more vulnerable than a lot of people expect. I still think it's likely to go blue, but I
yeah.
think the gap is going to be less than 5 points for sure.
Yeah, if you press me on it, I say it's a light blue outcome in New York.
I think red New York is not out of the question this year. I still think it's likely to go blue.
Yes, I would agree.
Now here's the next one, Illinois. The gap was about 1 million, and the population of Muslims in Illinois is a little under 500,000. However, I don't know if you saw the Tim Pool video from a week or two ago. He talks about his own personal experience with the gangs in Chicago and how the gangs are reacting or likely to react to the new Venezuelan gang that is pushing in and muscling in on a lot of their territory in Chicago.
I remember him talking about it.
I watched through that video. Tim said that he's actually been to Venezuela. Tim said that the Venezuelans are not likely to expect the sort of honor killings that the gangs in Chicago have already been doing. I Again, I'm not educated on Venezuela or Chicago at all. I remember hearing somewhere else that Venezuelan gangs, MS-13, that type of thing, are extremely violent, are capable of extremely brutal murders, ritualistic sometimes murders, methods of murder. But the thing Tim said is they do it mostly for economic reasons. They do it to protect their drug trade, to protect their financial interest, whereas the gangs in Chicago, yes, they do economic killings too, but for the most part, they're a culture of honor. They kill based on insults, honor, and he gave examples for this. Now, I don't know how that's gonna turn out in voting. I don't know how many blacks in Chicago are gonna flip. I have no clue. It's possible that they just view it as another gang encroaching and they don't really associate it with national politics at all, even though it's a gang of Venezuelan illegals. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, I don't foresee that having a large electoral impact necessarily on the black voters there. I think it's actually more likely to impact your um, rural and suburban voters who turn on the news and see, you know, they can't go into Chicago on a nice weekend with their family to get, a Chicago style deep dish pizza because there's a gang war going on. It's just I think that your suburban and your rural voters get turned off by the constant news cycle about your inner city violence. There's a real sense to which we've had to kind of abandon our cities. The city used to be something that if you were a person who lived in the suburbs or the rural part of the state, maybe you take the family in on a Friday evening to do something fun, to see a show, to go get dinner. You can't do that anymore, especially in a place like Chicago. You can't do that in Chicago. You can't do that in a Philadelphia. You can't do it in a Baltimore. Baltimore used to have the Inner Harbor. Even that's like a no-go zone now. You can't go to these places anymore and enjoy the sights with your family. And I think that that's likely to have an effect on those voters who turn on the TV and see Venezuelan gang wars with, the local black gangs. Um, but in terms of actually having an effect on Chicago residents, I don't see it happening because Chicago is the premier Democrat city. It's like a stronghold for Democrats. I think that they have the political machine there. It's so powerful. So I don't personally see that having any effect in the city. But just to kind of sum up what I said, I do see it maybe having some effect with your rural and suburban voters.
I think Chicago residents are definitely noticing that migrants and illegals get preferential treatment, free hotels, free welfare, while U.S. citizens are left behind. I think a lot of them are going to shift based on that. but I don't think that shift is going to be 17 points statewide. I don't think
Sure,
it's, I think it, I
but
think Illinois is still going to go blue.
let's take let's take like California for example, where that's been the norm in the cities now for probably almost 2 decades. Uh, you know, LA and San Francisco. Uh, it doesn't matter how bad the reality on the streets gets. The people just double down and vote for more of the same, no matter what. And it's because a lot of people, and I would assume it's probably the same mentality of people in Chicago liberals, when they see things going wrong around them, they don't reflect and say maybe this is our policies backfiring. They just say we're just not doing it hard enough. We're not doing multiculturalism and socialism hard enough. We need to double down and do it harder, and then utopia will be within grasp. So it and I think that that's kind of the counter to that. The counter to anybody saying that these cities are going to wake up and turn red if it just gets bad enough. Well, San Francisco and LA are kind of your counters to that, where the reality has just been so bad for so long, and the people just double down. They can't get enough of it.
I think that's to an extent true. I think it's especially true with white liberal voters, but then again, I'm on the streets in Reading, Pennsylvania. I'm on the streets in the Bronx, New York City. Trump's neighborhood is Manhattan, New York City, and the Jersey Shore. Trump is saying that New York and New Jersey are not guaranteed blue. I'm saying that Pennsylvania is almost certainly going to go red, and New York is not guaranteed blue. I think New York City in particular is going to surprise us. I don't know about other cities. I don't know about California or Chicago, but I think New York City is going to surprise us.
Yeah, and I think to your point, there's almost, let me try to find the right words for it. There's almost kind of an innate conservatism in the New York attitude. The New York attitude, or at least as it's portrayed kind of stereotypically, is this kind of tough, hyper masculine, super prideful, the just the hey, I'm walking here
Yeah.
attitude. There's almost an underlying conservatism to just the personality of a place like New York City, and it's been buried under, just the multicultural nightmare for so long. But you have to kind of wonder if that still exists, in the Italian neighborhoods, in the Irish neighborhoods, just the kind of the machismo, factor that I think attracts a lot of people to Trump.
Interesting.
So to your point, yeah, I can see why New York City would have people would react differently, because people have so much pride. New York City residents have so much pride about their city. I once had it explained to me that New Yorkers act like no other place exists in the world except for New York, and I think that's true.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that's
basically.
true. That is exactly how they see themselves. They are the epicenter of the world, and with that comes a certain civic pride that maybe they are more affected by seeing urban decay take place around them, uh, unlike a place like San Francisco, which just seems to have a limitless appetite for homeless people shitting on the streets. They seem to have a limitless appetite for, you go into Walgreens and literally every single item is locked behind a plastic sliding plate.
Yeah.
You have to get an attendant for every single item. They don't seem to have any limit to what they're willing to go through.
I think the New York Mayor Eric Adams thing, his news story that's going on right now, is significant, not that voters care about it in New York. From what I've seen, they don't really pay attention that much to that particular thing. It's significant as a symptom of the cause. New York City is full. They have too much crime. They have too many migrants. City resources cannot support that. They don't have enough welfare. They don't have enough parking. They don't have enough public transit space. And it's bad enough that the mayor, the Democrat mayor, the deep blue area Democrat mayor is speaking out about it and getting legally, politically persecuted for that. I don't think voters in the city care about the persecution itself, but they do care about the things they see. They care about murders on train stations. They care about all the chaos on the train stations and how bad crime is, how much welfare there is, the city overstretching itself. They care about that.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't personally done enough research yet on the specifics of what Eric Adams is being accused of. As far as I understand it, there's plenty of substance there, but I guess it's just kind of picking and choosing who you go after because
Exactly.
it sounds like he's involved in the same sort of criminal activity that everybody's involved in, and we conveniently turn a blind eye to a lot of people doing it. So I mean, it doesn't sound like he's innocent by any means. I don't know to what extent he's being prosecuted solely as a result of him being vocal against the immigration policies of the Harris Biden administration. I'm not sure how related those are. I have seen some people.
Big mayor to speak out about it.
I
think
he
they
was.
Want to make an example.
He was, but then he backtracked. He backtracked on it and kind of said that the problem wasn't the Harris Biden administration. The problem was Abbott and DeSantis sending their illegals by bus to New York. That it was their fault. So he wasn't really willing, even when it came down to it. He wasn't willing to put the blame where it needed to go. He could have really made a strong verbal stand on the issue, and he didn't do it.
True, but then again, most people who read the news only read the headlines and maybe the first couple lines, and they're not going to get far enough into the story to see his backtracking on it, I don't think.
Yeah.
The damage is already done.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, though, I don't know to what extent his current prosecution's related to that. I think when he ran for mayor, I believe he was like running against like a crazy like far leftist defund the police candidate, and he was almost kind of running like a New York Republican.
Interesting.
Not in party affiliation, but just he was kind of running on like a he was kind of running like a Bloomberg.
I haven't looked into that.
Back when that race happened, he was kind of running. He was definitely to the right of the other candidate, the other alternative, whose name I can't even recall.
Right.
I can't recall who he was running against, but it was I think it was a woman, and I think she was just batshit insane. So.
Man, on this map on the Wikipedia page, I just switched it from county results to precinct results. And the wave of red there is surprising.
Yeah, man, but the infamous Democrat answer to that is land doesn't vote, people do. So they think if everybody lived all in one state, that one state should just decide the election for everybody else.
Well, moving on to the next state, we have Minnesota with a Muslim population of 114,000. And the gap in the 2020 election was about 225. Wait, am I doing math right? Yeah, 225,000. Or 230,000, that gap.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That doesn't account for RFK. That doesn't account for the people who are tired of BLM, tired of immigration, tired of inflation. I think Minnesota is likely to go blue, but I think there's uncertainty there. I don't think it's guaranteed. And I don't know exactly how much Tim Walz being the governor there, I don't know exactly how much that moves the metric. Sort of
I
depends
don't
on
know.
his approval in state.
Maybe it moves it down. I don't even think he's a popular governor there.
I don't know.
I'm still just baffled by him being selected as the VP candidate. The only thing I can think is that Harris thought she already had PA in the bag, and she didn't need Josh Shapiro in order to lock it up. That's all I can think. I can't think of any other possible reason why you would pick that guy as the VP candidate. Because had she picked Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania, I think, might be a done deal now.
Maybe they're more concerned about losing far left voters than they are about losing Rust Belt Jews.
I think that she had it in her mind that Pennsylvania is already locked up, which maybe that is a cause for concern. Maybe she thinks that the steel infrastructure, the election theft infrastructure in Pennsylvania is so solid in Philadelphia that she didn't need him. She didn't need to pick him in order to shore up the state, which if that's the case, I mean that is disconcerting. I don't know.
Mm,
But kind of to something we talked about, not here in this conversation, but a few days ago, just through text. Um, it gets to a point where if it gets to a point where the steel can't keep up, it can't keep up
too big
because
to
it would just be too blatant. It
Yep.
would be too blatant. Um, if you just had too many instances of the number of votes exceeding registered voters in an area. Yeah, you can get away with it in Philadelphia, I guess, but you can't. What do you do? What do you do once you get outside of Philadelphia County? If you have that taking place, not only in Philadelphia County, but the surrounding five counties, then it's a real red flag. I mean, there were real red flags last time around. I think there were more than ample red flags to say that the election shouldn't have been certified.
Right.
How many red flags do you need? There were more than enough, but uh, I think that you might be right that in Pennsylvania we may have enough of a critical mass of Trump votes that it's too big to steal. We'll see. We'll see. I hope so.
I'm
I,
gonna
I'm
take
really
a 2 minute break here. I will be back.
I will do the same actually.
Okay, cool.
Yep. All right, I'm back when you are.
Hello, I'm back.
Yep, same.
Cool. Yep. So on to the next state. Wisconsin has 70,000 Muslims. Now, imagine about 50% of those either voting third party or sitting out of the election. And consider that the gap between Biden and Trump in 2020 was 20,000. I think this is pretty dire for the Democrats. I think this alone definitely pushes Wisconsin over the edge. But then we have RFK, we have inflation. I don't know what the rigging situation there is, but this makes me a lot more confident in Wisconsin. What do you think?
In terms of the rigging situation, all that I can really recall from 2020, the big one I remember was they made poll watchers sit, 20 feet away because of supposed COVID restrictions. So the poll watchers were forced to sit so far away they couldn't see what was going on. And they did some similar shenanigans with the counting as well, where they made the observers sit behind like a plate of plexiglass 20 or 30 feet away.
Right.
And they used social distancing as their excuse. So that's what I recall specifically from Wisconsin. Beyond that, I don't remember any other specific shenanigans.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's changed or not. But that Muslim population in Wisconsin could mean something big. Next up, New Hampshire. This is a state with a smaller population, so a 7-point gap is, let's do math here. That's about 80,000 votes. Is 7% of the entire voting population of this state. But that 7% was the gap between Biden and Trump in 2020. Now here's the interesting thing. This is The Hill. Biden versus Trump versus RFK Jr. polls. Let's see, is there a date on this? I don't see a date here, but if you can see on the screen, the results of these 9 polls aggregated has Trump at 41, Biden at 40, and Kennedy at 13.9. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if Kennedy actually has that high support in New Hampshire. I know he is a New England guy. I don't know how many of those people say they're going to vote third party, but then at the last minute change their vote when they're standing there in the polling booth. We can see the 3 most recent polls. May has Kennedy at 3%, June has Kennedy at 4%, and July has Kennedy at almost 21%.
Damn.
And I have more on that. Here's RCP. Not a lot of polling to go on, but the polling that they do go on, they calculate it in such a way that Kennedy has 9%. And RCP is usually pretty trustworthy, but again, there's not a lot of data to go on.
Do you know if Kennedy was able to get his name taken off of most of the ballots at this point? I know that he was fighting legal battles in some of the swing states.
I think
where
most
they were
of them.
forcing him to stay on ballot.
I looked up Wisconsin, and I think there was a I forget if it was Michigan or Wisconsin, but there was a pretty recent ruling that I think it was Wisconsin, that prevented Kennedy from taking his name off. But other states, yes, he was able to get his name taken off. Let's see. Will RFK be on the ballot in New Hampshire? RFK will not be on the New Hampshire presidential ballot. Before his endorsement of Trump, most people were saying 60-40 his voters would go for Trump. But he endorsed Trump and he went on stage with Trump. Man, oh man. And here's the 2016 results for New Hampshire. Less than 3,000 votes decided that state in 2016. I think New Hampshire could go red. Easily.
I mean, it should. It should go red. We'll see if it does.
And next
The
up,
question
Virginia. Oh,
the question comes down to, who's the more hateable candidate, Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris? I think that Harris is far more unlikable than Hillary. By comparison,
that's a pretty tough competition.
if I put the two next to each other, Hillary starts to look kind of likable. By comparison,
hasn't had like an explosive misspeaking yet, whereas Clinton had the basket of deplorables moment. Kamala still has time to say something that completely dooms her presidential run. I haven't seen it yet.
I mean, she said a whole bunch of stupid things. Did you see her interview, her MSNBC, or yeah, it was her MSNBC interview the other day?
I did see that. I think that hurt her in the polls, but I don't think that was the nail in the coffin.
Well, she's not giving enough of an opportunity to get a supposed nail in the coffin because
Right.
she's limiting her exposure so much. There's no opportunity for her to really bury herself because she's doing so few interviews and so little instances of unscripted public speaking. There's very little opportunity for her to bury herself, the same way Hillary Clinton did. But even so, Clinton famously had the basket of deplorables statement, which definitely hurt her a lot. Harris, did you see her on Oprah just the other day?
I
She
didn't see
said,
that one.
"If somebody breaks into my house, they're getting shot." Like,
Oh boy.
like she's saying such.
Okay, Dick Cheney.
Yeah. Well, Dick Cheney's endorsed her, so maybe
Yeah,
that's
I saw that.
yeah. And I like all the Twitter personalities are out there, kind of saying, like, oh, take that, Republicans. Look at this. All the military generals and all these billionaires and Dick Cheney, and like they keep listing off all the people who are endorsing Kamala, and meanwhile the rest of us sit back and say none of this.
Yeah.
You know, you guys just don't get it. You don't get it. We don't see any of this as a plus for her. We look at this and say, all these are terrible.
I just pulled up CBS News 6 days ago. Harris accepts invitation for a second presidential debate. That's more opportunity for her to hang herself.
Yeah, here's just really quick. Here's something I posted on X just the other day. I put, Kamala Harris has the endorsement of the billionaire class like Mark Cuban, the celebrity class like Taylor Swift and Mark Hamill, the neocon warmonger class, Dick and Liz Cheney, and the bureaucratic state, the IRS. Trump has the Teamsters.
Nice.
Like like anytime she gets endorsed by someone else, we're like, wow, that's who you want on your team. That's who you want cheering you on.
Yep.
Billionaires, celebrities, neocon warmongers, and bureaucratic entities like the IRS.
Speaking of bureaucratic entities, Virginia. They have a Muslim population of around 200,000. I see a different source saying 169,000. Now, the gap between those two candidates in 2020 was around 350,000. Again, that doesn't account for RFK voters or people who are sick of inflation or immigration. I think it's certainly possible for Virginia to go red, but not guaranteed. I think it's less likely to go blue than Minnesota. What do you think?
I actually put Virginia. I think in my most recent map, I kept it blue. But in some of the maps, some of the predictive electoral maps that I have been doing, I put Virginia, undecided on the fence because I think that Youngkin, the fact that Youngkin got elected there, I think is pretty
Right.
telling.
I'm curious to see their voter registration numbers over time too. I'll have to look into
Yeah,
that
me
later.
me too.
Yeah. And next up, 2016 was a lot closer. It was a little over 200,000. Now, next up, drum roll please, 270 to win. Here is my prediction map.
Oh man, you gotta fill some of those in. You gotta call them.
Man. Um, so I'll start east to west. Maine, admittedly, I have not done my homework, but I've seen people who I trust, people who have been good with poll analysis in the past, say that Maine is not guaranteed to go majority blue. New Hampshire, we talked about. New York, we talked about. New Jersey, I'm
Well,
gonna.
Maine is one of those states that split their electoral votes up, so
Right, true, that
it's
too.
it's yeah, it's possible for Trump to get one,
Yeah,
and maybe Harris the other.
right. New Jersey, I'm straight up gonna say I'm superstitious. The reason I say that is Trump, I think it was back in like June or July, Trump had that rally in the Bronx, and then shortly after he had the rally on the Jersey Shore that had historic attendance numbers. And in that rally on Jersey Shore, he said that he claimed that he's gonna start targeting, he claimed that he's gonna win, I think is what he said, New York, New Jersey, Minnesota, and Virginia, those four states. I'm superstitious because I remember in 2016 he went after Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. He won all three of those states, admittedly by tight margins, but he won all three of them. And also, Trump is good at getting a feel for the mood of a neighborhood when he goes on the ground. He's he talks about in his book, I talked about this when I did my book review of Art of the Deal. He doesn't trust third party pollsters. He trusts going to the neighborhood and talking to a taxi driver and getting a ride around town and seeing how things are. His neighborhood is New York and the Jersey Shore. He has hotels, casinos, everything in a lot of stuff, a lot of properties in those two places. Those are the parts of the country that he knows best. I'm I'm superstitious. If Trump says that Jersey is going red, I'm not gonna bet against him. I it defies logic. Logic says that Jersey goes blue, but I'm not gonna bet against Trump when he says that.
Oh, really quick, Nebraska. Do you see Nebraska with that one blue, that little square, that one blue electoral vote?
Right.
So they split theirs up like Maine does, but Nebraska is trying to quick sign into law that all of their electoral votes go to whoever they all go to the same candidate. So that could be one additional electoral vote for Trump.
I'm skeptical that they have time to get that through before the election.
I mean, it's a very red state. So if they want to get it done, I think they can. But
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. I think they hold enough, super majorities in their houses to just make it happen.
Yeah. Well, Virginia we already talked about. North Carolina, you're going to talk about that next, but you can I previously had it red, which put Trump at 269. I colored it gray just to be safe, just because I think there's uncertainty there. And I'll let you talk about that later.
Sure. Yeah.
Michigan we talked about. Wisconsin I think is very, very, very likely to go red. There's still uncertainty there. I still paint it gray, but I favor Wisconsin to go red for sure. Minnesota we talked about that. Colorado, most people would expect it to go blue. I think there's uncertainty there because of well, two things. I think Trump's statement that he wants to decriminalize weed softened Colorado voters, not necessarily flipped them, but softened them on Trump. And also, I think the migrant hotel, the Venezuelan gang hotel in Aurora, where they're taking over buildings there and using that for human trafficking and drug trafficking. If the same thing, the same shift of opinion that I'm seeing on the ground in New York, people souring on the crime rate and souring on immigration, if that same thing is happening in Colorado, I think that state is definitely uncertain.
Yeah, that's gonna be a hard disagree on my part.
Okay.
Hard disagree on my part. I think that Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complexes. Was it Venezuelans in Aurora, or was it a different?
I think it was
Was it a
Venezuelan.
different flavor of gang? I don't even recall at this point. That's
Right.
that's just to speak to how numb we are to this anymore. I can't even recall which flavor of gang it was, but that might have a little push in Colorado, but in terms of Trump coming out soft on weed, um, I don't believe that Trump Trump trying to outflank the left on anything left uh, isn't going to convince any of them the same way it wouldn't work in reverse. Kamala Harris claiming that she is going to shoot a home intruder, it isn't going to get her any guns right activist votes at all. And I don't think that Trump saying decriminalize weed is going to get any potheads to his side, because all of them are already going. They're already going to go full Kamala. They're already brain dead.
Right. Well, that's what I said. That it doesn't.
Yeah,
That
I
alone
don't see
doesn't
that
flip
personally
votes.
having
It
any effect.
prepares them. It opens up their minds rather, but it doesn't necessarily flip votes. I think the Aurora thing is the thing that's flipping votes. Now the
In
people's minds are
order in
open.
order to have one's mind opened, one needs to have a mind that's not mashed potatoes. And I think that Colorado potheads they're working on they're working on mashed potato brains right now. I think that you could probably make a pretty clear correlation between um people who smoke copious amounts. I mean, I don't have any scientific data backing this up, but this is pure conjecture. But people who smoke copious amounts of marijuana um, are really prone to just emotional appeals from their politicians. Whatever, just whoever's making the better appeal to pathos is going to be the candidate that you gravitate towards, because any function of your brain towards rationality, I think, is gone at that point.
I think most people just want to go to work, come home, enjoy life, not necessarily super absorbed in politics unless something disrupts that cycle of go to work, go home, enjoy life.
Oh, I agree
Inflation
full-heartedly.
is
Yeah,
disrupting that cycle, and crime and migrants are disrupting that cycle.
most people aren't as engaged, as you and I are right now.
Right.
Um, yeah, the vast majority of people are animals of routine, and so long as that routine isn't hindered, they're not going to necessarily care who's in charge at the helm. Yeah, no, I agree with you there for sure.
Yeah. Well, and as far as Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, I have not done my homework on those at all. I am completely uncertain about those.
I mean, you could pop open like Nate Silver's 538 right now,
Nate
just to kind
Silver,
of
man.
see.
Come on.
Well, for all his faults, I think he's probably got a more accurate read on things than anyone else um, at the moment. But yeah, he'll give you kind of a feel for where these states are at in the moment.
Hmm. But as far as coloring some of these in, if you pressured me a little more to color some in, I would probably put Minnesota blue. I would probably put Wisconsin, Michigan red, North Carolina red. But just those three states, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Carolina, if he wins any two of those three, that's the election for him. I think New Hampshire is also likely to go red. If you pressured me, I'd probably put Colorado blue. So this map, 298 for Trump, 159 for Harris, is what it would look like if you pressured me a little more. Virginia could still go red. If you pressure me, I'll put Jersey blue. New York is not guaranteed. Maine is not guaranteed. These three are not guaranteed. I think Trump's gonna get more electoral points than he had in 2016.
I don't know. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about that. I think he's going to do better than 2020. But I don't know if he's gonna exceed 2016. I guess we'll see. I mean, I'll get into some of my drawbacks and reservations, once we discuss my map.
Just the Muslim populations alone in those two Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, I think Trump's at the very least gonna get over that 270 mark.
Yeah.
And next up, we have the map that you sent me.
Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm predicting at the moment. I did not color in Nevada because I haven't paid enough attention to it to really know what's going on there. I'd like to think that maybe Nevada will go red. But in previous iterations of my map, it didn't need to. It didn't need to, just like Michigan and Wisconsin didn't need to, so long as Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, all turned out. And here's the problem, but that gets turned on its head if North Carolina does not go red, which is now a real serious risk. And it's a real serious risk as a result of one particular gubernatorial candidate, Mark Robinson, which if you think now's a good time,
Yep, I got that.
we can go ahead and discuss that. Sure. So yeah, Mark Robinson, he's a Republican gubernatorial candidate in North Carolina with a tremendous amount of baggage. And I kind of mentioned this to you in text earlier, but it just reminds me a little bit of kind of Herschel Walker back in Georgia in 2022 in the runoff election. And I kind of get this feeling. I think Republicans have this bad tendency to pick these black Republican or black conservative candidates kind of out of nowhere, to use them as a shield against accusations of racism, especially in these more purple states in the South where there are large black voting populations. And in that endeavor to kind of avoid the tag of racism, they pick a candidate with just this mile-long laundry list of problems. I can't even remember Herschel Walker. He had a lot of problems. He had a lot of issues. You remember Herschel Walker, right?
I forget what his issues were exactly.
I think he tried to pressure like a mistress to get an abortion. I think he had like a domestic violence charge against an ex. Just a lot of bad stuff. That sure, the media probably takes it and blows it out of proportion. They probably make it a bigger story than the reality. But I kind of get the feeling that if you have any blemish at all and you're running for public office, especially as a Republican, you just need to be prepared for the fact that the opposition research is going to do everything they can to uncover every single dirty little fact. And if you're in the situation that Mark Robinson is, you really have no business running for public office. So I'm going to get into that then.
Yep.
Yeah, you may have recalled this news story making headlines about a week ago, or 2 weeks ago, And a lot of people that we talked to were all saying, oh, it's based. That's so cool. Makes me want to vote for him more. He was frequenting a porn website called Nude Africa, specifically for trans porn. But
Oh,
but what yeah, specifically for trans porn. And what he was saying on there was he was calling himself a black Nazi, and he said he wanted to bring back slavery.
I saw that.
So he yeah, but he described himself as a freak, and he seemed to have a tendency towards trans porn on this website, Nude Africa. In addition to that, he had an abortion with his girlfriend, who's now his wife. And he also had an email registered on Ashley Madison, which is the cheating website for anyone who's not familiar. So just a lot of things, a lot of bad things, all kind of piled together. And he was actually down. He was down in the polls against his opposition. I don't even know. I'm not dialed in enough to know who he's running against in North Carolina, but he was already losing. Now he's absolutely being demolished. He's probably going to lose that state. But what I'm really concerned is that he's going to drag Trump down in the state, because, and I shared an article with you that you have up now. Kamala Harris has focused in like a laser on North Carolina, specifically on Robinson, and she's making that basically her whole attack strategy in North Carolina now is to focus on him and to tie him to Trump, because Trump did pick this guy. This guy was a Trump pick. So that is why on my map I'm a little less confident about North Carolina now. The good news is he doesn't need to get North Carolina. If he gets Arizona and Nevada, he can forego North Carolina. Um, Now I've been painting Michigan and Wisconsin blue, not because I necessarily think that it's certain that they're going to go that way, just to demonstrate that they could go blue and he could still win, as long as he gets that Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. As long as he gets those, it doesn't even matter. He doesn't need Wisconsin and Michigan. And I will say that, after the data that you've shown me, I might be willing to even change those to toss ups. So I would be willing to adjust my map um, to paint those as toss ups now instead of light blue. And then I would probably make North Carolina a toss up. Um, I'm feeling good about Pennsylvania because of the work that Scott Presler is doing. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it. My map is, of course, a lot less optimistic than yours, but like I said, part of that is to demonstrate that he can technically afford to lose some of these swing states as long as he gets what I consider to be the critical ones that he has the highest likelihood of getting: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada.
Right. I'm not sure at all how much that moves the metric in North Carolina. Um, I can tell you what I've heard being a fly on the wall listening to Democrat door knockers in Pennsylvania. Something they've been saying is they're encountering people who are on board with the down ballot Democrat candidates, but they're not on board with Kamala. So that's why I think the real battle in Pennsylvania is going to be the Senate race. That's why we really, really need to keep working in Pennsylvania. But I think Trump is a lot more likely to win than McCormick, who is the Republican Senate candidate, unseating someone, Bob Casey, someone with a lot of name recognition, but not a lot of times that he's had his name in the headlines. He's just been in the Senate for our state for so long that people recognize the name. Oh yeah, okay, he must be good. He's been around for a while.
I think that McCormick's going to do better than Oz did. That's for sure.
I certainly
Um,
hope so.
oh, I think he will. I think he will. I think Oz was a disaster.
Yeah, Oz was a disaster.
Oz was a disaster. Yeah, I
Fair
think
woman.
yeah, I think McCormick will do better than Oz did. So, and I think that Bob Casey will do less well than Fetterman did because I don't know. I think Fetterman has kind of like a meme quality to him that people liked. So rather than his his like disability being a hindrance to him electorally, I think it actually helped him. I think people liked how kind of goofy and weird he was.
Yeah,
So
Fetterman's most uncertain moment was that 2022 election, and now that he's overcome that, I think in future elections he's going to have a lot more support.
I think so too. Yeah, I think Fetterman's around to stay. I don't think he's going anywhere for a while. But yeah, I think there's a chance. Yeah, I'm actually feeling fairly optimistic about McCormick. Um,
I think Fetterman's a possible presidential candidate in 2028.
I don't know about that. I think Shapiro will run before Fetterman does.
Possible. Possible.
Actually, I'm almost certain Shapiro will run. I think he just needs to wait for the next round. He needs to
Yeah.
wait for Kamala to be over. I think that um the next round of Democrats, the up and coming class, so to speak, it'll be Shapiro, Gretchen Whitmer, um, um, Newsom. I don't know if someone like AOC is full of herself enough, overconfident enough to throw her name in the ring yet. Maybe that's still a little further off.
I like to
Buttigieg,
think she knows that she's a fringe candidate and she won't have moderate support. I like to think that. I'm not 100%
well,
certain.
I don't think Bernie runs again. I think Bernie's done.
Oh yeah.
The question is, does she try to enter and pick up the Bernie? Does she go in and try to pick up all the Bernie votes? Does she try to carry on his mantle? Which, if it weren't for corruption in the DNC, he would have been the nominee like two times now.
Hmm.
Two times in 2016, Hillary Clinton. She kind of used the power of the DNC to steal it from him, and then in 2020 they did it to him again.
I agree Clinton did cheat in the 2016 primary, but I don't think she needed to. I think she would have still won.
I don't think so. I think Bernie would have beaten her if they hadn't used super delegates and other other tactics.
But anyway, yeah, circling back around, I mentioned that thing I said about being a fly on the wall for Democrat door knockers in Pennsylvania
Yeah, yeah.
to say that one down ballot technically candidate does not necessarily move the metric on Trump versus Harris. And that New York is another example. 2022, Lee Zeldin came, I believe, within I think it was just over 5 points. He came very close to being a Republican governor of New York in that election. But that was after, let's see, let's find it. New York.
While
Yeah,
you
so it was a
while
little over 5 points gap.
yeah.
But then in 2020 was a 13-point gap between Trump and Biden. So governor elections and Senate elections are a lot more dependent on the candidate than presidential elections as far as whether or not a state is painted red or blue. But convinced me to paint North Carolina gray, though, because I
I'm
realized I
really
was going too much
yeah.
on what I've heard people who are good with polling. I'm going too much on what they say and not enough on actually doing the homework myself.
And to remind you too about North Carolina in 2020, North Carolina was one of those states that wouldn't call it for Trump until about 3 or 4 days. They were trying desperately to steal North Carolina in 2020, and it was close enough that they were able to drag it out about 3 or 4 days before they actually called it, which was ridiculous. So I absolutely think that North Carolina has a real chance of being blue this time, um, which doesn't necessarily kill him, but I just sent you over another map. So I'm updating this based on what we talked about today. Um, I've changed Michigan and Wisconsin to gray. Um,
Let me pull
I've
that
actually
up.
changed. I meant to do this earlier. Arizona gray as well, and I'll tell you why. Um, Heritage Foundation recently they put out a video. Unfortunately, I don't have a link for you. I apologize for that. But Heritage Foundation Oversight Project. Um, they have a video. They have illegal immigrants admitting that they're registered to vote and stating that they plan on voting for Kamala Harris, and that's in Arizona. So I think that we mentioned earlier in this discussion. I think that illegals are going to play a big part this time in the election in terms of the vote outcomes. I don't see them playing a big part in, say, Pennsylvania, but I do see them playing a part in maybe Texas, definitely in Arizona, maybe Nevada, um, some of those Southwest states, especially the swing states. I think that the Democrat machine has probably been working diligently these last 4 years to put in place a system of illegal voters. So that's my big concern with Arizona. And then I did mention earlier too, Carrie Lake is the Senate candidate there in Arizona. She's getting killed, like she's getting destroyed. And I like Carrie Lake, I really do. I feel for her. I think that the last election was stolen from her. But I just think she should have dipped out. Whether you lost fairly or unfairly, um, there's really only a few people who can just keep running again and again. Like Trump is one of those people who can go back at it again. He can jump back in the ring. I don't know that that necessarily works for anyone else, and I think Carrie Lakes is an example of that, where I don't think that she lost fair and square to what's her face in Arizona?
Was that Hobbs?
Yeah, Hobbs. Yeah, who you remember the video came out with her standing there in the vote tabulation room with like her hands on her hips.
I
Like,
didn't see that one, but I believe it.
yeah, like she was in the room where the votes were being counted because she was the Secretary of State, so she oversaw that process. Which is just it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, Carrie Lake did not lose that election fair and square. There were clear, obvious shenanigans. That being said, I think she should have dipped out afterwards. The fact that she's just running again and again now, hoping for a different outcome. Um, she's absolutely getting destroyed in the Senate race.
Hmm.
So that makes me concerned for Arizona. I hope that it's once again not a down ballot effect. Um, like I think we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see in North Carolina. I think that Trump's in trouble in that state as a result, not just of Robinson, but some other factors as well. So that's why I'm gonna make Arizona and North Carolina gray. Which, if you look at that updated map, um, that map does kind of favor Democrats at that point.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking
But
at
I'm
that.
feeling more optimistic. I mean, I'm feeling more optimistic on Michigan and Wisconsin than I was at the start of the night. So thank you for that.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm gonna give you all the credit for my optimism there.
Yeah, that 40% of Muslims voting third party is that astonished me too when I read it.
Could you ever see a scenario where, like Jill Stein or whoever the Green Party candidate is drops out and endorses Harris, just because just because, the left is so apocalyptic when it comes to Trump that they're willing to do things they wouldn't otherwise be willing to do. Do
I
you see any possibility of that?
I don't think that's likely at all. Cause Jill Stein's been running since 2016 and before. She's committed to the cause.
Do you think Jill Stein is like a secret conservative who's just being a spoiler? Maybe that's
Consider
maybe
your
that's a
home
thing.
state is Massachusetts. No, I don't think she's a secret conservative.
I mean, she has to know the effect that she has, on the election. She's, pretty much universally hated by Democrats because she's a spoiler candidate.
Third parties are a little weird in that way, in that they don't care. They value their own party's unique cause more than the national election result. Like if that specifically applies to Greens, Libertarians, and Constitution Party. Those are the big three third parties. And I don't think that applies to RFK. When I listen to RFK speak, I get the gut feeling that he's genuine when he talks about valuing the health care of Americans more than whether or not he wins the election.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a genuine guy. And I think, I think that him actually realizing that he was going to be a spoiler candidate and dipping out and endorsing is it's probably one of the biggest things I've ever seen him do. Um, when he announced his candidacy, I looked into him a little bit, and I really didn't like most of what I saw from him in terms of policy prescription. But I have a lot of respect for him now. That he was willing to dip out, once he realized he was going to be a clear spoiler for Donald Trump.
I think part of that was also Trump being willing to adopt the Make America Healthy Again policy points. I remember hearing RFK speak saying that he also reached out to Kamala, and Kamala just completely stonewalled him, didn't even get
He
through.
he supposedly he volunteered to drop out and endorse her for a spot in her administration, and her camp said they didn't want anything to do with him, which is just
Right.
it's just bad politics. It's just foolish.
You're a vaccine denier.
She was a vaccine denier. She literally said she wouldn't take a vaccine developed by Trump.
Funny how that works.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. So, what else we got, man? Any
The
other
next
topics
link I have is the Teamsters link you gave me.
Oh yeah, yeah, sure. So the Teamsters they did two internal polls, and uh Trump dominated those polls. Um People are trying to say, leftist media is trying to say that it's because they're sexist because they're all men. And I actually think they have a point. I think that Kamala Harris is so off-putting to men. Um, this is going to be the biggest gender gap election probably, I don't know, probably in American history.
You might be onto something.
This is going to be the men versus women election, which is terrible. I mean, it's absolutely awful for our society. Um, but yeah, Now, like I said before, the Teamsters, the head of the Teamsters, I don't know, the Teamsters president, they chose not to endorse Trump, even though he won 2 internal ballots. But by not endorsing Harris, it's kind of like an unspoken Trump endorsement. And that is really huge
Right.
because the Teamsters have always been a reliable Democrat staple vote, always.
As I understand it, they have traditionally always endorsed a presidential candidate, but they're not doing it this year.
Correct.
I'm looking at those polls you mentioned. The first one was uh, window from July 24th to September 15th. They voted 59.6% for Trump and 34% for Harris, but then there was another one where they voted 58% for Trump and 31% for Harris. So in that second one, both of those candidates lost support. Harris lost more support than Trump in that second poll.
Okay. All right. And I don't know if that article you have up does it show how they voted for Biden? Because they voted, so that demonstrates how much they've shifted in such a short time. Because they voted overwhelmingly for Biden when he was the candidate.
So there's something interesting about that. So I'm going to read from, this is the Teamsters website, I'm going to read from here. From April 9th to July 3rd, nearly 300 Teamsters local unions nationwide conducted first-of-their-kind presidential town halls, soliciting endorsement preferences from members via straw polls. The in-person voting was held prior to Biden's withdrawal from the race. So this isn't individual members. This
Or
is,
I
this is,
yeah.
they had all these individual locations vote, and then each location is one vote when they put these results together. The Teamsters polling data shows members backed Biden 44% to Trump's 36%.
Yeah, so that just demonstrates what a meteoric fall the support went from Biden to Harris. I really think she's more off-putting than Hillary, and part of me wants to agree with you that Trump's going to do even better than 2016 because I think she's just so much worse. But then, the other part of me says this thing's going to be razor tight because they've had, 8 years since then to perfect the shenanigans. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Do you think there's going to be like an October surprise?
almost certainly.
What could it even be at this point? What could it even be?
Yeah, what's more surprising than multiple assassination attempts? Oh man.
Well, I think it's not going to be about Trump if they come up with one because there's nothing left to find out about Trump. So they'll try to come up with something about Vance.
Interesting.
I think that they have nothing left to fire at Trump. Everything's already been, unloaded.
I
They
don't
have
think they're going
no
to find a lot against Vance either. I don't think there's a lot to be found against Vance because he already put so much of his life into his memoir out there for everyone to see.
You know what I will say? What they can do, and actually this is what they kind of did last time. They'll just make something up, and then it won't get debunked in time.
Project 2025.
Well, I was going to say suckers and losers comment.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
example. It was made up. It wasn't real. Trump has 20 something people who were there who says he did not make the suckers and losers comment about fallen D-Day soldiers, including people who do not like Trump, people who have nothing to gain from exonerating him in that, like John Bolton said he didn't say it, said it was a hoax, it was a lie. However, there are still a plurality of people today who believe it because
Yeah.
it got brought up right before the 2020 election. I want to say it was maybe a few months before. I don't know that that was an October surprise, but it was brought up maybe a few months before, and it was never properly debunked.
I
And
will
now it just
say, I
kind
think
of,
the people who believe that never would have voted Trump in the first place.
well, I just think back to what you said about the people who were not politically plugged in, the people who they don't follow politics. They just hear it offhand. They hear one guy talking to another guy. Did you hear Trump call fallen soldiers suckers and losers? Oh, really, man? That's terrible. Like people who like low information voters.
Hmm.
I think that yeah, that's a really damaging it's a really damaging claim, and I believed, I mean, I never believed it was true to begin with. Trump loves the troops. Like Trump is a
Yeah.
patriotic guy. I don't believe for a second that he said anything of the sort, and I don't believe he would.
I
You know,
think it
people
would
try
be
to,
damaging in that way you said, if not for inflation.
well, I'm just saying, you know, if they don't have an October surprise, they'll just invent one. They'll invent one,
I
and
know of at
there
least
won't be
one
enough
October
time to debunk
surprise
it.
that's in the works that benefits Trump.
What are they going to have?
Have you heard of My Faith Votes?
No.
Oh, well, it's a Christian organization that is supporting Trump, and they've been doing a letter writing campaign. They're collecting letters from, I forget if it's statewide or nationwide, but they're holding on to. Oh, I wish I had the number offhand. I want to say it's close to 1 million handwritten letters from Christians all across the country, and they're waiting till a certain date in October to release the floodgate of these letters and send them to Christian voters all across Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right.
So that's going to be one thing. There's probably going to be multiple October surprises that completely unexpected.
Well, the disadvantage to a Trump attack, a Trump the disadvantage to the Trump camp launching and October last minute attack is that all the mainstream media outlets will just refuse to pick up on it, and it won't get beyond the bubble that it would already be in, which is,
Right.
it'll be on X, it'll be on Twitter, it'll be on the internet, but it won't get beyond that.
That's the advantage of this letter writing thing. People, like someone took the time to handwrite something, hand address it, and send it in. Someone took the time to make a personal argument in support of Trump that is personally getting delivered to a Christian voter in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I mean, if you're I don't see how as I don't see how as a Christian voter you weren't already uh motivated to vote, just because the Harris Biden administration has probably been hands down the unfriendliest administration to religious freedom in our lifetime too. I don't think we've seen any administration that's cracked down harder on churches um, than this one.
You'd be surprised. Going to work every day, I pass a Lutheran church that, for a number of years now, they've had a lesbian pastor, and they fly the pride
Ugh.
flag. And
Oh my God.
their current message that they have on the
So
billboard: "We support the separation of church and hate."
so those aren't real. Those aren't real Christians.
I mean, well, for for the purposes of polling, pollsters call them Christians.
Sure. I don't even do people even attend those churches? Like, what's the congregation look like at a church that puts like a
Ah,
rainbow flag out? If you put the Pride Progress flag outside your church, how many people are actually showing up to your Sunday service? Like 10 people? I'd be
it's
I'd be,
It's been over 10 years since I've actually been inside the doors of that one, and that was before they went full left wing. So I couldn't say how many people. I remember back in the day they actually did have a pretty good Sunday school program.
Oh man, I wouldn't let my kids anywhere near
Yeah.
their Sunday school now.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah, the
so
Lutheran and UCC and some of the others, there's a lot of people that are getting counted as Christians for these news articles that are definitely on the left wing side of things.
they're the kind of people that, when you ask them about their religion, they'll say, "I'm spiritual but not religious." You know,
Yeah,
they
that's
they,
good.
they like to say something like that.
Yeah.
Church services that do yoga and stuff like that, ignoring the fact that yoga is itself a pagan religious practice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those over here in Lancaster, in the city. You know what's surprisingly, I guess apparently, from what I've learned is it's pretty split down the middle. Mennonites,
Yeah, that they
half of Mennonites are like ultra liberal and half are like ultra conservative, and there's no middle ground.
I've met both. Yeah. I haven't looked recently, but the biggest the biggest I've my mind is going blank. Conference is what they call it. It's a group of congregations coming together. They call that a conference rather than an official. Uh, wow, my mind is going blank. Denominational government or
Sure, sure,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, so the biggest conference, which was MCUSA, Mennonite Church USA, had a few years back a national meeting where they had representatives from all across the country, congregations from all over USA, and they voted thinly. I forget what the margin was. It was around 60% in favor of adopting some new measures which changed the language to redefine marriage and specified a certain number of LGBT representatives in the conference governing body and stuff like that. The process for a congregation to leave that conference is a lengthy one. Mine voted yes. Mine did leave that conference. We're in a different conference now. I haven't looked at recently how many other congregations have left. Granted that that process could take months or years. But MCUSA conference lost a lot of membership dues because of that. So that's what's going on in the Mennonite world. At least MCUSA is more worldly, and a lot of the old order Mennonites belong to local conferences.
yeah.
But yeah, mine moved to a different conference, one that's more local.
All right, man. Well, was there anything else we wanted to cover?
I think that's all the links we have to go over. Yeah. Well, if you want to call it there, we can.
Well, yeah. I'm looking at it's about 6:15 a.m.
Yeah.
Just about. Yeah, it's probably a pretty good time to call
We
it.
went over 2 hours. Nice.
Yeah, we sure did.
Yep. Well, I will stop the stream then. And everyone listening, have a good day.
All right, thanks, man. It was great.
Yep.